Hi everyone. In this video, I will go over some of the main points of Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz's work, Theodicy. Abridgment of the argument reduced to syllogistic form of 1710. This is a shortened summary of some objections to his main points in his famous work, Theodicy. A theodicy is a theory of why God, if he is all good and powerful, would allow evil to exist. Now, more contemporary theodicies are usually responses to atheistic arguments against the existence of God. But Leibniz is responding to logical difficulties in explaining certain attributes of God and the existence of evil. In his time in the 18th century, there were very few atheist writers. As a result, this work assumes the existence of God. Now, in the Theodicy, Leibniz claims that God is a necessary being and a necessarily good and all-powerful being. That's the Theodicy. That's the work that this work is based on. Because of God's perfection, Leibniz argues that in creating the actual world, God has created the best of all possible worlds. It simply would not have been possible for him to create a less than best of all worlds possible. But this view leads to some apparent logical contradictions and objections. In this paper, you will first see the argument. Let's see here. That constitutes the objection. So you see the premises here, 1 and 2, and then therefore announces that the conclusion is coming here. So this is the claim, and these are the premises or reasons in support of this claim. Then you'll see a prosyllogism here after a short answer there. Some of them have a prosyllogism, not all of them, in support of one or more of the premises in the objection argument. You can see here by looking at the conclusion of the prosyllogism, the claim or the conclusion. Sometimes we use those words, and we use those words synonymously. God has not chosen the best, and that is number 2, the premise number 2. So the prosyllogism here is arguing for premise 2. So sometimes in an argument, you have 2 premises, and these are 2 statements, right? These are statements are sentences that can be true or false. They're about the world, and they can be true. They can either be true or false. And a good argument is one in where if the statements that are the premises are both true, and they should lend support for believing the conclusion. Now, Leibniz will usually tell us which premise or premises of the objection or prosyllogism he disagrees with in his answer, and the answer comes down here. Right? Note that you can analyze arguments in 2 ways. You can either disagree that one or more of the premises is true, and of course give reasons why you disagree, because that becomes your own argument. Your conclusion is that the premise X is not true, and then your own premises for that would give the reasons for that belief or that statement, or that the premises support the conclusion. So we could argue that, say, in this argument here, if we disagreed with this, we'd have to look to see if premise 1 is true or not, premise 2 is true or not, and if we think it is not, then we need to give reasons why we think it is not. So that's the first way to analyze an argument. The second way is to try to discover if the premises give support or is connected in such a way to the conclusion that it gives support for the truth of the conclusion. So if it doesn't, then we give an argument where the claim is, the conclusion is, the premises do not support the conclusion, and then we give our own reasons why. This abridgment to the Theodicy is a great example of an argument analysis, and so we can see how critiquing an argument works by working our way through it. So the first objection is that contrary to the fact that God is all-powerful and all-knowing, so on, God must be lacking in power because he created a world in which evil exists. So that's an objection to Leibniz's view that God must have created the best of all possible worlds. Leibniz's response is that an imperfection in the part may be required for a greater perfection of the whole. I'll leave it to you to find that in here. The point is that a world with no sin might be a less perfect world than the actual world. Perhaps it is necessary that evil exist, at least to a certain degree, for the world to be perfect, or the best of all possible worlds. I guess that's not necessarily perfect, but the best of all possible worlds. So in the second objection here, the claim is that there is more evil than good in the world. The first premise states that if there is more evil than good in humans, then there is more evil than good in the whole work of God. Okay, I'm paraphrasing a little bit. The second premise states that there is more evil than good in humans. Therefore, there is more evil than good in the whole work of God. Leibniz's response is that even if we accept that there is much evil in humans, there is a surplus of good in non-human animals, creatures, he says, non-intelligent creatures, that actually compensates for and surpasses all of the evil in humans. Okay. The third objection focuses on whether humans can avoid committing sin. The upshot here is that if humans have no choice but to sin, then it is unjust to punish them for sinning. This, of course, would contradict God's attribute of being all good. Leibniz's response is that there are two kinds of necessity, which we will call hypothetical necessity and absolute necessity. He starts discussing it here, and he certainly points it out here. It's a hypothetical. The necessity of such an event is hypothetical, and the other one is called absolute. Okay? In hypothetical necessity, free will is presupposed. And even though God knows what will happen, the agent is free to choose. An agent is somebody who can make a decision. So an agent, generally a human being with free will. Okay. On the other hand, absolute necessity is the kind of necessity where praise or blame would be pointless. Right here, it's pointless to praise or to blame because there's no choice on the part of the agent. In the fourth objection, it is claimed that God contributes to sin because he does not try to prevent it. So he's an accessory to it. Leibniz responds that it is possible that if God tried to prevent sin, he might perform an unreasonable action. In other words, by allowing humans to sin and not stopping them, God might actually be allowing a better world to exist. In the fifth objection, the claim is that God is the cause of sin, since God produces everything that is real in the world, and sin is real. The response is that God creates all the positive realities. God is the cause of all perfections, and consequently of all realities considered as purely positive. But that the defective realities, which include sin, occur because of humans. He appears to be saying that God creates things in the best possible world with imperfect materials. So while the result is harmonious and beautiful overall, the parts contain imperfections, including the human capacity to sin. The claim of the sixth objection is that God is less than all good because he punishes those who have done as well as it was in their power to do so. The response is that God always gives sufficient aid and grace to those who have a good will. Well, this is a will that is good. This isn't a good will as in being courteous and happy towards someone. A will that is good is a concept that's much deeper than that. We should get that straight. Definitely get that straight between those two. A good will is two words there. A good will. Goodwill is a kind of courteous attitude towards others, perhaps generous. But that's quite a bit more surface than the deeper concept of a goodwill. Okay. Good. So the claim of the sixth objection, okay, yeah, sorry, there we go. So we're thinking here of adults who have the power and ability to choose freely. They fall into the quote on page 8. Okay. That says, if anyone has followed the light which has been given him, here, He will undoubtedly receive greater light than he has need of it. He will undoubtedly receive greater light when he has need of it. Leibniz simply denies the damnation of infants who died without baptism or outside the church, and so on. Okay. In the seventh objection, the claim is that, again, God is ultimately unjust because he only gives the means to achieve a good will to some, but not to all. The response appears to be that some are placed in more favorable circumstances due to reasons hidden in the depths of the wisdom of God. He says the best plan of the universe which God could not fail to choose, made it so. Okay, so it's the best plan. May seem bad, but it's actually part of a much bigger plan that is overall good and better than it would be otherwise. Lastly, Objection 8 claims that since whoever cannot fail to choose the best is not free, and since God cannot fail to choose the best, God is not free. This is equivalent to saying that if God is a necessary being, then God cannot choose to do other than what he does, and this seems to contradict freedom, according to the objection. Leibniz says that he denies the major premise, that would be the first premise, because true liberty is to be able to use one's free will for the best, and God always does this, so he is perfectly free. Okay. I hope this video has helped you understand this very interesting reading. Thank you for your time and attention.